Humans leave quietly. The galaxy feels the consequences immediately. Silent Departure Commander Alina Voss stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Trade Summit, her uniform pressed and her expression unreadable. The massive chamber of Station Meridian hummed with the voices of 300 delegates from across known space. The Vacrine with their crystalline exoskeletons, the Thorians with their multiple sensory stalks, the Pelthrin whose bioluminescent skin pulsed with their emotional states, all of them waiting for what they assumed would be another routine, human presentation. Alina activated the central holographic display. The Terran Federation seal appeared, rotating slowly in the air above the platform. Distinguished members of the Galactic Trade Summit, she began, her voice steady and clear. I stand before you today to deliver a formal announcement from the Terran Federation Council. After 40 years of partnership and cooperation, humanity has made the decision to withdraw from all galactic treaties, trade agreements, and collaborative projects. Effective immediately, all human personnel will return to Terran space. We thank you for the opportunities you have provided, and we wish you continued prosperity. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the chamber erupted. Ambassador Zixthur of the Vacrine Empire rose from his seat, his crystalline form refracting the chamber lights into sharp, angry patterns. This is absurd. You cannot simply abandon your commitments. We have fulfilled every contractual obligation to the letter, Alina replied calmly. Our withdrawal clauses were negotiated and agreed upon by all parties. We are exercising those clauses now. But why? Demanded Councillor Thera of the Pelthrin Sovereignty, her skin flashing confused shades of orange and blue. What have we done to offend you? Alina's expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. This is not about offense, Councillor. This is about recognizing that our approaches to cooperation are fundamentally incompatible. We believe it is time for us to pursue our own path. High Chancellor Morvith of the Thorian Confederacy made a dismissive gesture with 3 of his sensory stalks. Let them go. Humans have always been too emotional, too unpredictable. We managed the galaxy for millennia before they arrived. We will manage it again. Alina gathered her data tablets and prepared to leave the platform. I hope you are correct, Chancellor. I truly do. As she walked toward the exit, she could hear the delegates already discussing how to redistribute human responsibilities. The general consensus was clear. Good riddance. Within 6 hours, the order reached every human outpost, station, and settlement across 200 star systems. The response was immediate and coordinated. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo closed her research laboratory on Vacrine Prime, carefully documenting her work on crystal-based energy storage, but taking her breakthrough equations with her. Chief Engineer James Park shut down the automated systems he had installed throughout the Thorian shipping network, reverting them to manual control as specified in the original contracts. Mediator Yuki Tanaka concluded her final negotiation between the warring factions on Pelthrin Station 7, filed her reports, and departed before either side realized she would not be returning. Across the galaxy, humans packed their belongings, transferred their duties, and left with the same quiet efficiency they had always displayed. No protests, no dramatics, no lengthy explanations. They simply left. The aliens barely noticed. On Station Meridian, the summit continued. Delegates debated trade routes and resource allocations, confident that the minor inconvenience of human departure would be resolved within weeks. After all, how important could one species really be? The answer came faster than anyone expected. 72 hours after Alina's announcement, the first reports began arriving. On Vacrine Prime, the agricultural processing stations that fed 3 billion citizens experienced cascading failures. The automated systems that had run flawlessly for 15 years suddenly began producing errors. Crops rotted in holding bays. Distribution networks froze. Within a day, food shipments stopped entirely. Vacrine engineers descended on the facilities, confident they could resolve the issue quickly. They had built these stations after all. But as they examined the systems, they discovered something disturbing. The original Vacrine designs had been functional, but inefficient. Someone had modified them, optimizing every process, streamlining every pathway, eliminating every redundancy that caused bottlenecks. The modifications bore no signature, no documentation, no explanation. They simply worked. Until they didn't. Who authorized these changes? Demanded Chief Engineer Krelvax, staring at the schematics that no longer matched any blueprint on file. No one, replied his assistant. According to records, these are the original specifications. That's impossible. These systems are at least 30% more efficient than anything we designed. The human liaison, Dr. Okonkwo, she filed weekly maintenance reports. Krelvax pulled up the reports. They were thorough, detailed, and completely uninformative. Standard efficiency adjustments, they said. Routine optimization protocols. Nothing that explained how an entire agricultural network had been rebuilt from the inside out. Contact Dr. Okonkwo immediately, Krelvax ordered. We've tried, sir. Her communicator is offline. According to departure records, she left the system 48 hours ago. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Thurian shipping lanes, once a model of efficient trade routing, descended into chaos. Ships collided. Cargo was lost. Entire convoys vanished into unmapped regions of space. The Thorians had relied on human navigators to coordinate traffic through their busiest sectors. They assumed the navigators were simply following Thorian protocols. They were wrong. The humans had been making thousands of micro-adjustments every day, compensating for gravitational anomalies, solar winds, and stellar drift that Thorian sensors couldn't detect. Without those adjustments, the carefully balanced system collapsed. On Pelthrin Station 7, fragile ceasefire Yuki Tanaka had negotiated lasted exactly 4 days. Without her subtle interventions, old resentments surfaced. Misunderstandings escalated. Within a week, both factions had retreated to armed camps, and the station's commerce district was in ruins. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Ambassador Zexter addressed the assembly, his crystalline form now pulsing with agitation rather than anger. We must acknowledge the scope of this crisis. 17 major systems are reporting critical failures, food shortages, transportation breakdowns, communication blackouts. We need solutions immediately. We need the humans back, said Counselor Thera bluntly, her skin a pale, worried green. Impossible, High Chancellor Morveth declared. We cannot appear weak. We will resolve these issues ourselves. How? Thera demanded. We don't even understand what the humans were doing. They filed reports, attended meetings, completed their assigned tasks. But somehow, they were doing far more than anyone realized. Morveth's sensory stalks quivered with irritation. Then we will study their methods and replicate them. We are not helpless children. We built civilizations before humanity existed. But can we maintain them? Zexter asked quietly. The question hung in the air, unanswered. On distant Vakrine Prime, Krelvax and his team had been working around the clock for 5 days. They had managed to restore partial function to 2 of the 30 agricultural stations. At this rate, it would take them 6 months to repair the entire network. Vakrine Prime would be starving long before then. There must be documentation somewhere, Krelvax muttered, scrolling through files for the 1,000th time. The humans couldn't have just held this all in their heads. His assistant looked up from her console. Sir, I found something. Dr. Okonkwo left a personal log. It's not part of the official records. Krelvax activated the file. Sarah Okonkwo's face appeared on the screen, smiling gently. If you're watching this, it means you've realized how much work we were actually doing. I want you to understand something. We didn't hide our contributions out of malice. We simply learned very early on that suggesting major changes to your systems was considered insulting. So we made small adjustments. Tiny optimizations. Fixes you never noticed because they happened gradually. Over time, those small changes added up to complete system overhauls. We didn't intend to make you dependent on us. We were just trying to help. But now you know the truth. Everything we've built quietly. And now that we're gone, you're seeing the real cost of taking someone's contributions for granted. The recording ended. Krelvac stared at the blank screen, understanding dawning like a cold sun. The humans hadn't just maintained systems. They had been quietly rebuilding an entire civilization's infrastructure while everyone else took credit for the results. Across the galaxy, similar realizations were occurring. The Thorians discovered that their efficient routing algorithms were actually human-designed. Overlays on top of their original inadequate systems, the Pelthrin found that half their diplomatic protocols had been subtly modified by human mediators to account for cultural blind spots Pelthrin themselves couldn't recognize. The more the aliens investigated, the more they discovered. Medical facilities where human doctors had redesigned, treatment procedures to accommodate species-specific needs that had never been formally studied, educational programs where human teachers had developed entirely new pedagogical methods that tripled student comprehension rates, defense networks where human strategists had identified and patched security vulnerabilities that could have led to catastrophic breaches. All of it done quietly. All of it attributed to routine maintenance or standard procedures. All of it now gone. 6 weeks after Elena Voss delivered humanity's departure notice, the Galactic Council faced an undeniable truth. Without humans, their civilization was collapsing. Not slowly, not gradually. Immediately and catastrophically, Ambassador Zexus called another emergency session. This time, High Chancellor Morvith did not object when Thera spoke the words everyone was thinking. Hey, we need to find them. We need to bring them back. Whatever it takes. The vote was unanimous. A search fleet would be assembled. Humanity would be located. And somehow, some way, they would be convinced to return. But as the delegates filed out of the chamber, none of them knew that finding humanity would be the easy part. Understanding what humanity had become in their absence would be the real challenge. The unraveling the search fleet assembled at Station Meridian under the command of Ambassador Kale Theron, a Thorian diplomat with more experience dealing with humans than most of his species. He had always respected their unpredictable nature, their tendency to approach problems from unexpected angles. Now, standing on the bridge of the flagship Resolution, he wondered if he had ever truly understood them at all. Status report, he commanded. His primary sensory stalks focused on the navigation display. All 12 ships are ready for departure. Ambassador, replied Captain Vernona, a Vacrine officer whose crystalline form had dimmed noticeably since the crisis began. We have coordinates for 17 human colonies, 42 research stations, and 8 major settlements. Priority targets have been identified based on strategic importance. Good. Begin with the closest locations. And Captain, when we make contact, I want our approach to be diplomatic, not demanding. We are requesting their assistance, not ordering it. Vernina's form pulsed with what might have been skepticism, but she acknowledged the order. The fleet departed, jumping into hyperspace toward the first coordinates. They arrived at New Terra, humanity's oldest and largest colony, 3 days later. The planet hung in space like a blue-green jewel, its cities visible from orbit as glittering networks of light. Kale felt relief wash over him. At least humans hadn't vanished completely. Hailing all frequencies, Vernina announced, broadcasting standard greeting protocols. They waited. 1 minute. 5 minutes. 10. Ambassador Vernina said slowly, I'm detecting something unusual. The cities we're seeing, they're not generating any power signatures. No energy readings at all. Kale's sensory stalks stiffened. That's impossible. We can see the lights. They're not lights, sir. They're reflections. Mirrors and glass catching the sunlight. The cities are empty. They sent down scout teams. The reports confirmed what the sensors had detected. New Terra cities were pristine, perfectly maintained, and completely abandoned. Buildings stood intact. Streets were clean, but there was no one there, no humans. No signs of struggle or hasty evacuation. They had simply left, taking everything essential and leaving behind only the structures themselves in the central government building. Kale's team found a single message carved into the marble floor of the main hall. We built this. Now build your own. The next 17 locations told the same story. Empty colonies, abandoned stations, deserted settlements. Humanity had evacuated completely, leaving no forwarding address, no indication of where they had gone. It's as if they erased themselves from the galaxy, Vernona said, studying the navigation charts. Every known human location is empty. No signals. No traces. Nothing. Kale settled into his command chair, all 8 of his sensory stalks drooping with exhaustion. They planned this. For how long, I wonder? Years? Decades? Does it matter? Vernina asked. The question is, where did they go? The answer came from an unexpected source. A distress signal from a small mining outpost in the outer reaches, far beyond the normal boundaries of civilized space. The outpost belonged to the Kryn, species the Galactic Council had always considered too primitive to warrant full membership. When Kale's fleet arrived, they found the mining operation had been on the verge of catastrophic failure. Life support systems were failing. Food supplies were exhausted. The Kryn miners had been days away from death, but they were alive, and they were thriving. Kale demanded meeting with the outpost manager, an elderly Kryn named Torvik, whose scaled skin bore the scars of decades in the mines. Torvik gestured to the sleek, unfamiliar equipment that now filled the station's critical systems. They came 3 weeks ago, offered help. We didn't even know we needed it until they showed us how close to disaster we were. Who came? They called themselves the Collective. All humans, but not like the humans we knew. They had technology we'd never seen. Ships that moved without hyperspace. Energy systems that generated power from nothing. They repaired our life support, upgraded our mining equipment, left us supplies, and departed. Kale felt something cold settle in his central nervous cluster. Did they say where they were going? They didn't need to, Torvik replied. We can contact them anytime. They gave us this. He held up a small, crystalline device that pulsed with soft blue light. They said if we ever need help, we just activate it. They'll come. May I see that? Torvik handed it over. Kale examined the device with his sensory stalks, trying to understand its construction. It was unlike anything in the Galactic Council's technology database. The energy signature was stable, efficient, and completely foreign. They said they're building something new, Torvik continued. A coalition of species the Council ignored. Those of us who weren't powerful enough, wealthy enough, or advanced enough to matter. They said humanity spent 40 years learning that respect isn't given to those who follow the rules. It's earned by those who write better ones. Kale returned the device carefully. If I wanted to contact them, how would I do it? Torvik smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. You don't contact them, Ambassador. They contact you. If they think you're worth their time? Over the next month, Kale's fleet chased rumors across the frontier regions. Each story was the same. Mysterious human ships appearing to help struggling civilizations. Advanced technology freely shared. Aid offered without demands for payment or political leverage. And always the same message. We're building something better. The trail led them to the Veil Nebula, a region of space so dense with stellar debris that navigation was nearly impossible. Galactic Council ships had never penetrated more than a few light years into its depths. But the rumors said humans had built something inside, hidden where no one would think to look. Kale's fleet approached cautiously. As they entered the nebula's outer edges, their sensors began detecting energy signatures. Thousands of them. Then millions. An entire civilization hidden inside a cosmic fog. We're being scanned, Vernina announced. Multiple sources. Technology I don't recognize. Open all hailing frequencies, Kale ordered. This is Ambassador Kale Theron of the Galactic Council. We seek peaceful contact with human representatives. Response came immediately, but not through their communication systems. It came through every screen, every display, every holographic projector on every ship simultaneously. A human woman appeared, middle-aged with gray, streaking her dark hair and eyes that had seen more than Kale could imagine. Ambassador Theron, she said, her voice warm but formal. I am Dr. Marcus Chen. I speak for the Sovereign Collective. You've come a long way to find us. The question is, why should we let you? Kale straightened, addressing the image directly. Dr. Chen, the galaxy is in crisis. Without human assistance, critical systems are failing across hundreds of worlds. Billions are suffering. We were wrong to take your contributions for granted. We acknowledge that. But please, we need your help. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. Let me tell you what's happening on your worlds right now, Ambassador. The Vacrine agricultural crisis has killed 43,000 people from starvation and related diseases. The Thorian shipping chaos has resulted in 97 vessel collisions and over 2,000 deaths. Pelthrin Station 7 has descended into civil war with a current casualty count of 12,000. And those are just the major disasters. Shall I continue listing the smaller catastrophes? Because I can. We've been monitoring everything. Kale felt shame wash through him. Then you know how desperately we need you. You need us, Dr. Chen agreed. But do you respect us? Do you understand what you lost? We've spent 40 years trying to teach you that cooperation means mutual respect, that helping someone doesn't mean diminishing yourself, that the smallest voice might have the most important insight, but you never learned. You took our help, praised our efficiency, and never once asked how we achieved what we did. Because asking would have meant acknowledging that you needed us, and that was unthinkable. We understand now, Kale said quietly. We were arrogant, we were blind, and people are dying because of our mistakes. If there is any humanity in you, please help them. Dr. Chen was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. But it was a sad smile. There's plenty of humanity in us, Ambassador. That's precisely the problem. We can't stand by while people suffer. Even people who never valued us. Even people who would probably forget our contributions again the moment the crisis ended. Then you'll return? No, Dr. Chen said firmly. But we'll help, on our terms. The Sovereign Collective is sending aid ships to every system in critical condition. We will provide food, medicine, technical assistance, and emergency repairs. Free of charge, no contracts, no obligations, no political strings. That's incredibly generous, Kale began. It's basic decency, Dr. Chen interrupted. Something we hoped the Council would learn by example. But we're done teaching. We're done being invisible. We're done being taken for granted. The Sovereign Collective is open to any species that wants to join us. But membership requires one thing above all else. Respect for every voice, no matter how small. The images on the screens changed, showing the interior of what could only be the collective's home. Cities that blended nature and technology seamlessly. Ships unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Species of every description working side by side, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. This is what we built while you ignored us, Doctor. Chen said, this is what cooperation looks like when it's real. You're welcome to visit, Ambassador. You're welcome to learn. But understand this. We are not coming back to prop up a system that refused to change. If the Galactic Council wants to survive, it needs to evolve. We'll help you through this crisis, because that's who we are. But after that, you're on your own. The transmission ended. Within hours, ships began emerging from the Veil Nebula, heading toward the Council worlds. True to Dr. Chen's word, they brought aid. They saved lives. They prevented total collapse. But they didn't stay. And across the galaxy, civilizations began to realize that humanity had done more than leave. They had graduated. And the real question wasn't whether humans would come back. It was whether anyone else was ready to follow them forward, the New Order 5. Years had passed since the Sovereign Collective revealed itself to the galaxy, and the transformation was undeniable. Ambassador Kale Theron stood in the observation deck of Collective Station Alpha, looking out at a view that would have been impossible a decade ago. The station orbited a binary star system deep in what used to be called the unreachable zone. Around him, engineers from 17 different species worked together on projects that pushed the boundaries of known science. The atmosphere was relaxed but focused. There were no hierarchies here, no species given priority over others, just shared curiosity and mutual respect. Impressive, isn't it? Said a familiar voice. Kale turned to see Dr. Marcus Chen approaching, looking healthier and more at peace than when they had first met. In the years since, Kale had visited the collective 7 times, each visit teaching him something new about what humanity had built. Every time I return, there's something new to marvel at, Kale admitted. Last visit, you had 50 member species. Now I hear it's 73. 75 as of yesterday, Marcus corrected with a smile. The Yeneri and the Fex both formally joined. Species the Council classified as pre-industrial, and therefore not worth engaging with. What? Have they contributed? The Yenari have an understanding of quantum harmonics that put our physicists to shame. Their primitive musical traditions turned out to be sophisticated mathematical models. The Fex observe time differently than most species. They experience multiple probability streams simultaneously. Do you know what that means for navigation and predictive modeling? Kale's sensory stalks rippled with fascination. The Council never even studied them properly, because the Council measured value by technological advancement, not potential, Marcus said. That was their first mistake. They never recovered from it. It was true. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. After the crisis, some civilizations had committed to genuine reform. The Vacarine had restructured their entire government to give equal voice to previously marginalized populations. The Pelthrin had established truth and reconciliation programs to address centuries of internal discrimination. These species were thriving, rebuilding with new principles of equity and cooperation. But others had clung to the old ways. The Thorian Confederacy had fragmented into 6 competing factions, each claiming to represent the true Thorian government. The Zaltesh Empire had descended into economic collapse after refusing to change their exploitative trade practices. Species that could have evolved instead chose pride and paid the price. How is the reconstruction proceeding? Kale asked. Better than expected in some regions, worse in others, Marcus gestured toward a holographic display showing the galactic map. Blue regions indicated stable systems. Yellow showed systems in transition. Red marked zones of continued crisis. There was more blue than red, but the red areas were troubling. The species that accepted our help and actually implemented reforms are doing well. Those that took our emergency aid but returned to their old habits are struggling again. We helped them survive the immediate crisis. We can't make them change their fundamental values, the Thorians, still fighting among themselves. We've offered mediation 17 times. They've refused each time, claiming it would be admitting weakness. Marcus shook his head. Tragic. They have the resources and knowledge to rebuild. They just can't get past their cultural obsession with dominance. Kale had maintained contact with his home government throughout the crisis. He had watched his own people struggle with the realization that their superior civilization had been propped up by the very humans they had dismissed. Some Thorians, like himself, had embraced humility and sought to learn. Others had retreated into denial and resentment. What about the Vacarine? Kale asked. I heard Ambassador Zexther has been instrumental in their reforms. Marcus's expression brightened. Zexther has been remarkable. He didn't just acknowledge what went wrong. He took personal responsibility for changing it. The Vacarine now have open citizenship for 42 previously excluded subspecies. Their council actually listens to dissenting voices. They're even establishing exchange programs with the collective. Have they applied for membership? Not yet. They're building the foundation for it. That's what matters. We don't want species to join the collective because they're desperate. We want them to join because they genuinely embrace what we stand for. A soft chime interrupted them. Marcus checked his datapad and smiled. Perfect timing. There's someone I want you to meet. He led Kale through the station's corridors. Architecture was distinctly human, but incorporated design elements from dozens of species. Vacarine crystalline structures provided natural light diffusion. Pelthrin bioluminescent panels offered ambient mood lighting. Thorian gravity regulators allowed for multi-species comfort zones. It was a physical manifestation of the collective's philosophy. Take the best from everyone. Honor all contributions. Create something greater than the sum of its parts. They entered a conference room, where a young human woman was reviewing holographic schematics with a group of alien engineers. She looked up as they entered, her face lighting with recognition. Double quotes, Dr. Chen and Ambassador Theron. Welcome. Ambassador, this is Captain Lisa Park, Marcus said. She's leading our outreach to the frontier regions. Cale recognized the surname. Any relation to Chief Engineer James Park? My father, Lisa confirmed. He's actually in the next room. Would you like to say hello? I would be honored. James Park had aged well. His hair had gone completely gray, but his eyes still held that sharp, analytical intelligence Cale remembered from their brief interactions before the Exodus. They clasped hands in the human gesture of greeting. Ambassador Theron, James said warmly. I've heard you've become one of the collective's strongest advocates. I advocate for change I should have pushed for 40 years ago, Cale replied. I've been meaning to ask you something, Chief Park. Did you know, when you were working on the Thorian shipping network, did you know how dependent we would become on your optimizations? James considered the question carefully. Yes and no. We knew we were doing more than simple maintenance, but we thought you knew too. We thought you were allowing us to make those improvements because you recognized their value. It wasn't until later that we realized you genuinely didn't notice. You saw the results, but never questioned the process. Because we assumed our own superiority, Cale said bitterly. Because you had never experienced true cooperation, James corrected gently. The species that founded the Galactic Council came from backgrounds of competition and conquest. You built an alliance, but you never built a partnership. There's a difference, Lisa spoke up. It's actually what I wanted to discuss with you, Ambassador. The frontier regions are full of species that were never part of the Council's structure. Some are interested in joining the collective, but others are wary of any large-scale governmental system. They've been burned before by promises of mutual benefit that turned into exploitation. What do you propose? Cale asked. A new model. Regional cooperatives. Small networks of neighboring systems that work together on specific issues without joining a larger political entity. The collective would provide technical support and resources, but no political oversight. Let them build trust organically. It was brilliant in its simplicity. And it was exactly the kind of solution humans excelled at. Practical, flexible, and focused on the needs of the people it served rather than the priorities of the powerful. I think the Thorians could benefit from this model, Cale said slowly. The factions don't trust each other enough for reunification, but they might cooperate on specific issues if they didn't feel it threatened their autonomy. Would they accept help from the collective? Marcus asked. From you? Probably not. Their pride is still wounded. Cale paused, considering. But they might accept help from another Thorian. Someone who left the council, learned from the collective, and returned to share that knowledge without any political agenda. Marcus and James exchanged glances. Are you volunteering? Marcus asked. Cale felt all 8 of his sensory stalks quiver with nervous anticipation. I believe I am. With your permission, of course. You don't need our permission, Ambassador. The collective doesn't work that way. If you want to help your people, we'll support you however we can. But the choice is yours. 6 months later, Cale stood in a temporary shelter on Thoria Prime, the original Thorian homeworld. The planet had been largely abandoned during the Prosperity years, when the Thorians had spread across dozens of wealthier systems. Now, as their confederation crumbled, people were returning to the place their civilization began. He had started small. A few families who needed help getting their farms productive again. A neighborhood that wanted to restore their water purification system. Workers who remembered the old manufacturing techniques that didn't require expensive imports. Word spread. More people came. Not because Cale was an ambassador or represented any faction. Because he helped without asking for anything in return. One evening, as he was reviewing plans for a community power grid, an elderly Thorian approached him. Her sensory stalks were bent with age, but her movements were still precise. You're the one who left, she said. It wasn't a question. I am, Cale confirmed. They say you learned from the humans, that you're bringing back their methods. I'm sharing what they taught me. But these solutions are Thorian. We just forgot how to cooperate with each other. The elderly woman settled onto a resting platform. I remember when the humans first arrived. I was young then, working in the council chambers. They seemed so strange, so inefficient, always asking questions, wanting to understand our perspectives before offering their own. We thought it was weakness. It was wisdom, Kale said quietly. Yes, she was silent for a moment. Can we learn it? At our age, with our history, can we really change? Kale thought about his visits to the collective, about the Vakrine, who had restructured their entire society, about species like the Yanari Fex, who had gone from primitive to valued partners, about humans who had spent 40 years being ignored and then chose compassion over revenge. Yes, he said with certainty, but only if we want to. Change isn't something that happens to us. It's something we choose. Every day. In every interaction, the elderly woman's sensory stalks rippled in what might have been hope. Then perhaps there's a future for us after all. 10 years after humanity's quiet departure, the galaxy was fundamentally different. The Galactic Council had been reformed into the Galactic Coalition, with new governing principles emphasizing equity and mutual respect. The Sovereign Collective continued to grow, now encompassing 147 member species. And throughout known space, small communities were learning what humans had known all along. True strength came not from dominance but from cooperation. Ambassador Kyle Theron, now known simply as Kale the Builder, stood with Dr. Marcus Chen on Collective Station Alpha, watching new arrivals dock at the station. A ship from Thoria Prime, bringing Thorian engineers to study renewable energy systems. A vessel from Pelthrin Station 7, once torn by civil war, now sending peacekeepers trained in conflict resolution. A transport from New Vakrine carrying students eager to learn about interspecies cooperation. They're starting to understand, Marcus said. Thanks to you, Kale replied. No. Marcus shook his head. Thanks to everyone who chose to change. We showed what was possible. But they did the hard work of becoming better versions of themselves. Below them, in the station's central plaza, humans worked alongside aliens of every description. Not because they had to. Not because someone was in charge, but because they recognized something that had been missing from galactic civilization for too long, the simple truth that everyone has value, that every voice deserves to be heard, that the strongest societies aren't built on hierarchies of power, but on networks of respect. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had taught it something far more important, how to conquer its own worst impulses. And in the quiet spaces between the stars, a new age was beginning. Not the age of human dominance. Not the age of any single species. But the age of genuine cooperation, where the measure of civilization wasn't how high you could rise, but how many you could lift as you climbed. The lesson humanity left behind was simple. Sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to step back and let others stand on their own. And the greatest gift is teaching them how.